It takes a moment for
okay,
it to go live. Yeah.
Is it a no-no for me to be having a cigar during the program?
You can do whatever you want.
Okay, I'm going to do that because and also I have to show you can you see her there or not?
Yes. Oh, look at your sweetheart.
She is my assistant. She's my
Okay.
editorial assistant.
I
She
love
has
her.
been laying or sitting next to me for almost every paragraph I've ever written.
Oh, that's so fabulous.
And I just adore her. And she's, declining. She's going on 15. Well, I
Wow.
told her, here's your chance, Emmy. That's her name, Emmy. You could make it. You could be more famous than the farmer's dog. Come on in here. So she came in, but she promptly laid down.
I see.
If you can work her in, that would be great.
Well, I think we just did because we are officially live.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so everyone had a chance to meet Emmy, and you're welcome to bring her back in as many times as you want. But for those who are watching, so this is 20 Questions. I'm Lisa Kastner. I'm here with one of our amazing authors, Joseph Bauer, and I'm just basically going to give you a fabulous opportunity to learn more about Joseph with some inane and not so inane questions. But before we actually dive into the questions, and by the way, if you are watching, you are welcome. You're always welcome to toss whatever questions you have into the comments section of whatever venue you're watching this. And I will be sure to reply those questions or repeat those questions so that Joseph has an opportunity to respond. Great. Awesome. Okay, so a little bit about Joseph. He writes novels from Charleston, South Carolina, and Cleveland, Ohio. His debut book was The Accidental Patriot in 2020, the first of a 3-book series published by Archway from Simon & Schuster, which will publish the next 2 in the series in 2021 and 2022. Actually, well, they've been published. The Patriot series features an ordinary lonely widower from Pittsburgh who's paired with a specially trained protection dog when he agrees to design a secret military installation. And this is all following the murder of the government's first choice. Reviewers have praised the quality of The Accidental Patriot and its unusual character development, readability, pace, research, all combined with great suspense and action. And then a little bit about the novel that we've brought forward, Sailing for Grace. So as Grace Goodboe nears the end of her life, she asks her husband, Wilton, to take on her last cause, reuniting families separated at the El Paso border. With his freedom on the line, Wilton must navigate the tension between law and morality in this heart-wrenching tale of love and sacrifice. And with that, I get to start asking questions. So, Joseph, what is the very first book you remember reading?
Beyond reading, the cowboy books and the sports books that a 5 and 6 and 7-year-old will first be reading, the books that don't have covers even from the library, but they absorbed me. But the first real novel that impacted me that I remember was Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson.
Oh, wow.
And when I read that, I immediately asked my father, what else can I read from this author? I love it. And so he took me back to the library and I read Treasure Island. And the tendency to be interested in the writings of earlier authors has just never left me. So I know you're going to be asking me questions about what I like to read now as an older man.
Mhm.
An older gentleman, not in Moscow, but in Charleston, South Carolina. I hope I don't disappoint you or any viewers with my answers, because I still tend to be attracted
Mhm.
to earlier generations of authors.
Mm.
I do read contemporary authors, and I have great respect for so many of them, like, oh, you name them. John Grisham uh, is I think, a quality writer for
Mhm.
sure, and has done much for other authors, and I'm grateful to him for that.
Mhm.
Daniel Silva, who has definitely been an inspiration to me in terms of technique and style.
Mhm.
But the influences on me have almost always been much earlier authors and some British authors,
Mhm.
but earlier Americans, we wouldn't consider them in universities today to be early American, but 20th century, obviously Hemingway, Fitzgerald.
Mhm.
But Carson McCullers is a personal hero of mine.
Mm.
Willa Cather, even way before Carson McCullers,
Mhm.
and especially Saul Bellow, John
Mhm.
Updike, and Philip Roth. So
Mhm.
I know I'm preempting some of your questions,
I'm
but
fine.
you showed me a little clip of them, and so I was thinking about them.
Mm.
I will admit I was thinking about them over my customary evening martini, which I have completed. I,
Fabulous.
I remember having one with you.
Yes, and we had an amazing time.
It was, but of course, what happened in Philadelphia stays in Philadelphia.
As it should.
Right. It was all above board. But
Oh.
um, I love writing, and I love the act and process of writing.
Mhm.
And I get nourishment, literally nourishment, out of reading these great authors, men
Mhm.
and women,
Mhm.
um, and also doing what you're doing. Now, I don't expect a lot of people will be watching me. Maybe they will, but if they do, I have a hunch it may be farther down the road as
No,
my
it's,
work
it's
becomes
probably now.
as my work becomes more appreciated.
Mm.
But um, before I began writing seriously, which has been about every minute for the last 15 years,
Mm.
but when I started that, and I admit, I wish I'd have started so much earlier,
Mm.
but I had to live. I had to provide for a family. I had to do something honorably,
Mhm.
as well as I could, but only as long as I had to, because I wanted to write. I've
Mm.
always wanted to be a writer since I was 10 years old,
Mm.
nourished by books like Kidnapped, Treasure Island,
Mhm.
Robinson Crusoe. Um, Later in high school, the writing of Robert Frost, poetry. But I became, even in high school, completely in love with Carson McCullers' The Heart is a Lonely Hunter.
Mm.
Uh, and then shortly thereafter, Ann Tyler's work.
Mhm.
Boy, would I love to meet her. And I
Mm.
know you may get to a question, if you can have dinner with three or four authors, who would they be? Well, Ann Tyler.
Mm.
Stay healthy, Ann. Stay vibrant, because I want to make it to dinner with you. Um, those people just inspired me to feel that as soon as I know
Mhm.
that my children are provided for, educated,
Mhm.
I'm going to stop working a regular job and I'm going to become a writer of novels.
Mm.
I had no interest in nonfiction writing.
Mm-hmm.
I think because I was realistic and knew that I was not a credible expert in any particular field
Mm.
to write nonfiction
Mm-hmm.
uh, about current affairs or politics, and I wasn't a trained historian.
Mm.
Although had I not been an English major, I surely would have been a history major. I love the writings about history.
Mm.
And the exploration of not just what happened,
Mm-hmm.
but what was in the minds of the people that made it happen.
Mm.
What were the conversations? What were the driving forces?
Mm-hmm.
So, Sailing for Grace, which is my fourth published novel,
Mm-hmm.
um, is really, and I think some have kind of categorized it this as a very current historical fiction.
Mm.
It's not looking back to the 1800s
Mm-hmm.
or medieval times or even mid 20th century. It's looking at only a few years ago,
Mm.
but it is talking about things that really did happen,
Mm-hmm.
but related in a completely fictional story.
Mm-hmm.
I created characters who live in my novel, Sailing for Grace,
Mm.
through a very stressful, emotional, difficult experience that many thousands of families experienced in our country
Mm.
uh, in the period 2017 to through 2020.
Mm-hmm.
But I know I'm wandering. You're not going to get anywhere near 20 questions with me because that's the way I am.
You've
But
already answered like 5, so
okay,
we are all good.
I'll let you ask your next one.
So, who influenced your writing?
Okay. Um, it's a two-part answer.
Okay.
Those who influenced my first books
Mm-hmm.
and those who influenced Sailing for Grace and the work I've done since Sailing for Grace, which you and I still need to discuss because I haven't sent it yet
Okay.
to you or anybody else.
Okay.
But I've written 2 complete other works of long fiction since Sailing for Grace.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones that influenced my first work, which were in the genre of espionage
Mm-hmm.
and in the subgenre of political military espionage,
Mm-hmm.
uh, my influences were principally the American Daniel Silva.
Mm-hmm.
I read his book, The English Spy,
Mm-hmm.
came out, I think, 15 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
moved me very much. I had just decided to become a writer full time when I read that. I also read at that time about 6 novels by the great British espionage writers, Jean Le Carré,
Mm-hmm.
and one that's not as well credited but brilliant and considered in England and
Mm-hmm.
Great Britain as one of the 3 great British spy novelists. His name was and is, he's still living, Len uh, Deighton,
Mm-hmm.
spelled Deighton.
Mm-hmm.
Len Deighton. And I had read a little bit of his work somehow earlier in my life, but I remembered how compelling it was. So I went back.
Mm-hmm.
He was a great influence because he wrote um, classic trilogies.
Mm.
My first three books are not a classic trilogy because a trilogy is one long plot extended over classically 3 books.
Mm-hmm.
My books, the first 3, are really a series. They're
Mm.
not the same plot. They are completely independent stories and plots.
Mm-hmm.
You can read the middle one first and enjoy it, I hope. You can read the third one first. You can read the first one and none of the others
Mm-hmm.
and feel that you understand the whole story. So Len Dayton, because he wrote a series of true trilogies,
Mm.
he was a real influence to me. He wrote Hook, Line, and Sinker,
Mm-hmm.
I read. He wrote, those are 3 novels, Hook, Line, and Sinker. And he wrote Faith, Hope, and Charity.
Mm-hmm.
I read those 3. They're marvelous.
Mm.
They're probably still selling as many copies today in Great Britain as Sailing for Grace is selling today.
Mm.
Although I'm not unhappy, it's doing fine.
Mm-hmm.
But those were big influences.
Mm-hmm.
But now my influences have changed.
Okay.
I decided after you liked Sailing for Grace so much,
Mm-hmm.
that's how we met.
It is.
Um, and it was a completely different book, an
Mm-hmm.
approach. Not only in terms of the characters, but the settings and the entire, it was an emotional, essentially love story
Mm-hmm.
plot wrapped into a current social issue
Mm-hmm.
that can be controversial,
Mm-hmm.
but was filled with so much humanity that I thought everybody could agree on some of it. The
Mm. Mm-hmm.
love of parents for children,
Mm-hmm.
the longing of children to be with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what your political beliefs, everybody can identify with that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's what I focused on in writing this novel, Sailing for Grace. And
Mm-hmm.
it caused me to be influenced by a whole different range of authors. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to sound pejorative to any of my earlier influences or to any writer, but I looked much more uh, to writers who are exploring feelings, relationship,
Mm.
loss, much more.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I went to my library, which I have, and I love my library. The most painful thing about having a library is that unless you have enough space,
Mm-hmm.
you have to weed it from time to time. And I have
Mm.
to move volumes simply to make room for my new editions. But
Mm.
I will never remove the great influences on me. So I
Mm-hmm.
went back and I read Ann Tyler. Um, I read in particular a novel that was not one of her most successful, but it was a great book called Saint Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wonderful story about a young man
Mm-hmm.
trying to make his way in the life. He's got his own interests. He's a typical young man in his early 20s. He's
Mm-hmm.
not ready to be responsible
Mm-hmm.
for others, but he has an older brother who
Mm-hmm.
he loved, who gets suddenly and tragically killed in a car accident,
Mm.
leaving children.
Mm.
And it's the story of this young man's adoption of those children,
Mm.
in for his brother, raising them,
Mm-hmm.
giving them spirituality, love. He didn't have the spirituality, he learned it,
Mm-hmm.
acquired it. in raising them. And I thought, well, I read that again, and it helped inspire me in the theme and the tone of Sailing for Grace. But today I would say my greatest influences are the great American writers and some British, but Melville. I'm going to try to do what my older brother did. I haven't yet. He read Moby Dick the whole way through twice. My brother did this. He keeps teasing me. He's an English professor. And he keeps teasing me that I need to read Moby Dick twice, all the way through to catch up with him. But I love that man, my brother. I sent him today a review that was just published for Sailing for Grace because it was so, I can't believe, and it's so touching when a reader will put so much time. If I were to write the review that I read today and forward it to my older brother overseas, the English professor, it would have taken me at least 2 hours to put those many good sentences together. At least.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm so grateful that a reader would take the time to do that. But so I'm influenced a lot too, I have to say, Lisa, by my readers, by the words they choose. Of course, not all of them are welcomed, the words. I had one reader recently gave me a 4-star review, which is excellent, 4-star. And the first sentence of her review was tremendous. The second sentence was tremendous. And then she said, I could have done so much better with character development.
Oh my.
I take that seriously. This was obviously a very intelligent reader. And so I'll be quiet and let you ask the next question. But I'm very influenced by Updike, that man's mastery of a sentence. And I'm so enthralled with Saul Bellows' powers of not only observation, but how to put the words to the observation. He juxtaposes words that don't seem to be correct, but the way he does it, they're exactly correct in describing the wrinkles on an old man's nose. He'll put in words that you don't expect to be in the same sentence, like exotic and even a little erotic, and yet horribly old. I just love Saul Bellow. I'm reading his biography by Zachary Leader, which is 2 full volumes. It's absorbing. I can't pull myself away from taking an hour every day to read it, a full hour, because it's so good about that man and his life and his influences. Next question.
So who did you allow to read Sailing for Grace as you were writing it?
Yes. I wrote it in 2 locations. The 2 that I've written the most in. I started it in Cleveland, Ohio, overlooking Lake Erie. I was right on the ocean. Right, I mean, it seemed like an ocean. I mean, I was 100 feet from the shore. And the Great Lakes, if you're looking down at them from 150 or 250 feet, as I was, in a high-rise condominium residence, you feel like you're looking at the Atlantic Ocean. And there was a marina in sight of me with big sailboats. So it was perfect for me, after I had constructed the plot and was ready to begin writing.
Mm.
Write it there.
Okay.
Well, in this 15-story building, I had a little following of readers who had read, some of my prior books.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them, who I designated as my really brilliant female test reader,
Mm.
uh, a senior woman, but just so smart.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent her. She was reading the manuscript of or the published book of the Accidental Patriot,
Mm-hmm.
and enjoying it. She was texting me every couple days. Oh, I like this. I like the dog. It's good. I'm scripting me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I took a chance, and I sent her the manuscript that I had just finished of Sailing for Grace in a 3-ring binder.
Mm.
Always, when I write, I print my work, then I edit it in hand, then I enter the changes.
Mm-hmm.
What I think is fairly polished, I put into a 3-ring binder.
Mm-hmm.
I sent it to her, just finished it. Now it got revised later, including by you and by your encouragement to me to tighten it up further.
Mm-hmm.
But I sent it to her, and I was, on the one hand, very pleased, the other hand, disturbed. She calls me a week later and said, this book is from, I love Sailing for Grace.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much better than the Accidental Patriot. She said, which I like also.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to stop reading the Accidental Patriot, and I couldn't stop reading this. And I've just finished it. And this book, Joseph, it's I can't tell you how much I love this book.
Mm.
Well, of course, that is music to any writer's ears. So she was really, literally, even before my wife, the very first reader. My second reader was my wife,
Mm-hmm.
who has always been very supportive of me. But like you, Lisa, she tends to yell at me if she thinks I haven't written a paragraph as well as it should be.
Mm.
And she enjoyed all the earlier books,
Mm-hmm.
but she was very honest, and she said these are not real literary, Joe. They're great stories. They're well told. Everyone can love the dog.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone can love Stanley Goodbow.
Mm-hmm.
It's well written. But in her case, her genre, it's not her genre to read espionage.
Mm-hmm.
It's great literary fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Sailing for Grace knocked her over.
Mm.
She said, this is the man I married. And I said, well, I'm glad to hear that after 23 years. I mean, but I do have a cadre of readers. They're not all, well, they've kind of become friends.
Mm-hmm.
Not all. There's some acquaintances in there.
Mm-hmm.
I have 15 or 20 that I circulate a book to for their comment.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of Sailing for Grace, I deliberately selected 3 people that I knew from kind of knew to knew very well.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did know was that they were very conservative in their political beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So on purpose, I wanted them to read it to see if they found it, well, how it struck them.
Right.
The book is not easy on Donald Trump.
No, it is not.
Sister Hope Annie just has no use for him.
Mm-hmm.
He's the most unforgiving Catholic nun that ever lived when it comes to Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other passages in his appointees that I really difficult about.
Mm.
So I wanted to know, would this book be offensive
Mm.
to a significant part of the public? Whatever you want to say about Donald Trump,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people either like him,
Mm-hmm.
or even if they don't like him,
Mm-hmm.
agree with him.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a single one of those three object to the book.
Mm.
One said he was furious at page 30, but by the end, he really thought that these are very open questions.
Mm.
So that gave me encouragement.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a whole group that I send to. My more recent unpublished work I've sent to and have the kind of results in, which I'll tell you about in due course.
Mm-hmm.
But I keep trying to write a different kind of book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to write anything that's like the first books or too much like. I want them to be a hero for me in this regard as a writer is Philip Roth.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of music, a corollary, a hero to me would be Van Morrison.
Mm.
Great talent as a musician, great
Mm-hmm.
talent as a writer, but
Mm-hmm.
kept changing and changing and changing. And when you listen to a Van Morrison composition
Mm-hmm.
written 30 years into his fame, it's so different, but also so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
What he did earlier that you liked.
Mm-hmm.
The same with Philip Roth.
Mm-hmm.
He kept changing and changing.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually wrote what I would consider, classic historical novels. Well, I don't think there is such a thing as a classic historical novel because it's something that the professors have to write more about because I want to read it when they come up with
Mm-hmm.
a good characterization. Is it more than a mix of fact and fiction?
Mm-hmm.
How accurate must it be? How inaccurate, even flagrantly, can it be?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the topic of Sailing for Grace. Has it's a mix of fact and fiction.
Mm-hmm.
All of the fact that is recited in it is, to the best of my knowledge and research, extensive, is accurate.
Mm-hmm.
The statutes say what I say they say.
Mm-hmm.
The jury instructions are what judges give.
Mm-hmm.
There are options for them to give. The history and the Honduran state of affairs is as it truly is.
Mm-hmm.
Only fiction in the books. The fiction in the book are my characters. They never lived.
Mm-hmm.
There was never a Sister Hope Annie or a Wilton Goodfellow.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a pregnant pause.
Well, I think that was a wonderful response. So I am going to ask you if you could do one thing to change the world, what would it be?
I would cause or hope, try if I had the power, to fulfill Franklin Roosevelt's original dream, which he had far before people generally understood he had it, to form a United Nations.
Mm-hmm.
He used that term way before the United Nations was organized.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't pop in to Harry Truman's head in 1948.
Mm-hmm.
It was put on paper in his own hand
Mm-hmm.
by Franklin Roosevelt in 1940
Mm-hmm.
and presented to Winston Churchill on a ship
Mm-hmm.
in the form of the so-called Atlantic Charter.
Mm-hmm.
But the Atlantic Charter, in Franklin's own hand, recited, we need to have as our joint objective
Mm-hmm.
in fighting Nazism a United Nations,
Mm-hmm.
capitalized,
Mm-hmm.
in which all countries of the world, big, small, powerful, powerless,
Mm-hmm.
set the rules of getting along for the whole planet.
Mm-hmm.
In fairness, I'm not a historian. Woodrow Wilson had a somewhat lesser developed notion
Mm-hmm.
20 years earlier with the League of Nations.
Mm-hmm.
But his notion did not include the powerless. It included a league of the powerful nations.
Mm-hmm.
Roosevelt's was global.
Mm-hmm.
If I could do one thing, I would make that man's dream come true.
Mm.
If every country would arrange and help for business as a key thing,
Mm-hmm.
between the poor countries and the wealthy countries, and between the wealthy countries, business is the most powerful antidote, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
to war or the prospect of it.
Mm.
You don't have to bomb people that are doing business with you
Mm.
and that you need and you have a reciprocal benefit from.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be the thing I would do. I would try to get the best lawyers in the room and the best businessmen in the room and the best presidents in the room, all of them,
Mm-hmm.
say, please, here's a nice hotel. There's a room for each of you in there. There's a room big enough for you to meet every morning for breakfast and talk.
Mm-hmm.
Come out of it with an understanding of how you can get along, not as a country, as a world.
Mm-hmm.
I think books can be a big part of this, and literature,
Mm-hmm.
arts, the arts, all forms of arts. The book, I don't believe the novel's dying. I sure hope it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
We have to accept adjustments and changes in format and in the way people want to read it.
Mm-hmm.
But the written word has an enormous capacity to unify. My answer would be to find a way to make Roosevelt's vision of a true United Nations happen.
Wonderful. Describe yourself in 5 words.
Pensive, deliberative, patient, emotional, too often wanting a drink.
Well, now you must, now you need to describe your life in 5 words.
Okay.
I didn't say it was easy.
No.
I just said it was a good.
5 words without the adjectives around it. A father, being a father,
Mm.
a husband, observing, grateful.
Lovely.
I could talk for an hour on each of those, but I know you haven't got that time.
Well, I feel as though this next question will be quite revealing. If you could write yourself into a novel, would you be the hero or the villain, and why?
Well, I hate questions that are so, what's the right word? One or the other, because I would much rather be a supporting actor, a supporting character.
Okay.
So I'm dodging your question.
I'm fine with that.
As a writer,
Mhm.
I think I love or fall in love with my supporting characters
Mm.
the most. I mean, in Sailing for Grace,
Mhm.
I mean, if Burp LeBeau were a woman, I would want to marry him.
Mm.
I just love Burp LeBeau.
Mhm.
I don't know how I created him. I know that I had the image
Mhm.
of the actor, which writers do a lot. You know, we have a
Mhm.
figure that we kind of want to describe, that we see
Mhm.
impersonating that person or embodying that character. And I had in mind
Mhm.
the actor Ed Harris.
Oh, fun. Okay.
Not in all of his roles, but in a couple of his roles. He's
Mhm.
played the kind of weather-beaten guy like that.
Mm.
But that character, I just love to create Burp in his intimacy with Wilton.
Mhm.
The male-to-male deep, deep friendship is a theme that really attracts me.
Mm.
Not any sexual orientation aspect to it,
Mhm.
but the very deep friendship.
Mm.
And Sister Hope Annie,
Mhm.
I mean, when I created her, I knew I had to fight myself
Mm.
from putting her in to scenes where she wouldn't belong, because
Ah,
I
okay.
loved her so much. I
Mhm.
just wanted her and her cigarettes in that scene. I restrained myself. Um, so supporting characters
Mhm.
in the film industry, one
Mhm.
of my very favorite actors is someone a lot of people don't know, Richard Jenkins.
Okay.
What an actor. He's had like 2 leading roles in 150 films.
Oh my.
He's usually, and he's won an Academy Award, I
Mhm.
think, for his performance in, well, I'll get it wrong, but if your readers want to watchers, he's in a movie called The Visitor. And that's one of the few that he got the leading role. And he plays, I think, an author, either that or a college professor, but I think an author who teaches in a university in New England, but keeps a tiny apartment in Manhattan. He likes the city. And he only comes back a couple times a year to be in it. Comes back one day and it's occupied by an undocumented immigrant.
Oh my.
And he says, "What are you doing here?" And he first is very upset. But then he realizes and empathizes very quickly with the plight of this man. Well, it's a great movie. And I think he was nominated for Best Actor in it. But he was always in other things just a fabulous supporting actor. He could play the veterinarian, the pharmacist, the betrayed husband, the car salesman. Not the most handsome guy, but I love those supporting characters. So I would want to be a supporting character.
Okay. Is there anybody that you just dream of working with, and why?
Yes, I would love to work with Jeff Daniels. I think he would be such a perfect Will Goodbow. I'm biased there because I have met Mr. Daniels a few times in a coffee shop while I was writing in his hometown in Michigan. And I exchanged conversations with him and told him a few jokes, and he liked them. Now, of course, anybody that likes one of my original jokes, he's my hero.
Oh, absolutely.
So anyway, Jeff Daniels would be one. The other would be, of course, Tom Hanks. I would love to work with Tom Hanks. I did have a request to write a screenplay recently, and I accepted it on a tentative basis. And I had to stop after a month into it and break it off because I wasn't enjoying fully.
Understood.
Or putting words and sentences into characters that I had not created, into a plot that I had not created. And I felt more like a ghostwriter. Not a ghostwriter. I don't want to be a ghostwriter.
Got it.
So it was difficult. I had to say no. And but I'm really glad I did because my heart was just not in it. Screenwriting is completely different from novel writing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I'd seen a lot of interviews with people like like good writers. I mean, fabulous, like John Updike, like Kurt Vonnegut. Those two I saw in different interviews, and both said they did not want to write screenplays. They didn't want it to be pejorative. But, you know, in the average 120-minute film, there's like 13 minutes of dialogue. We writers, we want to write, of course, the dialogue, but more than the dialogue, we want to write the description. We want to create the feeling of that room. And to have a camera do it instead of us, I just can't abide by it.
Understood.
So, but I would love to work with the people I mentioned in their talent group. I mean, in that, you know. But if I did it without sounding pretentious, I would have Hemingway's philosophy, which he never wrote a screenplay. He was asked to, he wouldn't do it. He said, my feeling is I write the novel. If they want to make a movie of it, I throw it over the fence to them and do with it what they're going to do.
Okay.
And that's what I would do.
So now I need to ask if you would share with everyone your co-pilot, who the last I saw was laying on the ground.
She has happily moved
Oh,
to the, I'm going to tell me when you can see her.
oh, we can see her. Oh, goodness. So adorable.
She is on a Scottish plaid bed that I special ordered. She knows we're talking about her. She
Mm-hmm.
opened her eyes. And that bed is directly in front of my fireplace, which she loves. And your people watching may wonder, well, this man's talking to us from Charleston, South Carolina. What's a fireplace doing on May 30th? Well, it's because I discovered, as everyone else, air conditioning. And in my library, I keep it very cold because I love to sit by the fire. And so call it crazy, but and Emmy loves it. And she comes in here and sits by my fireplace with me. And I'm glad you met Emmy.
And to close things out, I want to ask, is there anything that you would like to share? Anything, whatever you want.
Well, I would say I would love to share that I hope readers will support independent publishers like Running Wild and independent bookstores. Now, no writer is going to tell you not to order your book from Amazon. We need Amazon. They're vital to all of us. But if you want to buy 10 copies because you've been so happy with the book and you want to give it to Christmas presents, go to your small bookstore.
Yes.
Look their day and let them order you 10 books. And if it's Sailing for Grace by Joseph Bauer, all the better. I had to make a plug.
No, I loved it. It was perfect. And with that, Joseph, as always, it is just such a dear, dear pleasure. And anyone who's watching, please, Sailing for Grace was, I did not mention, I was actually, as Joseph did mention, I was the editor for Sailing for Grace. And I have to say, it was just such a delight to have the opportunity to work with him on such a phenomenal story. Please go check it out. We've included in the banner a link to Joseph's website, so you can find out more about Joseph, about his books, and you can buy Sailing for Grace right from his site. So with that, again, thank you, Joseph, again for joining us on another 20 questions. Everyone watching, again, honestly, if you're watching this and you're watching the recording, you can still put questions in the comments because I do check it regularly, and I would love to have the opportunity to pass along any questions you may have. So with that, thank you, Joseph. Again, a complete and total pleasure.
Thank you, Lisa.